Eleanor, a 71-year-old widow, sat quietly in the sterile waiting room of the local clinic, the faint hum of fluorescent lights above blending with the shuffle of patients around her. She had come for a routine checkup, nothing serious, but her mind was already heavy with the loneliness that had shadowed her since her husband Thomas passed away. Her phone buzzed in her handbag, and when she saw Brianna's name on the screen, her heart lifted for a moment. Perhaps her only daughter was finally calling to check in, to ask how she was doing. With a small smile, Eleanor answered. But the voice that came through the receiver was distant, clipped, and chilling. Brianna didn't ask about her health or her day. Instead, she spoke with unsettling detachment. She had sold Eleanor's vacation house by the lake, along with her car. The reason? To fund a luxurious trip to Europe with her husband, Liam. Eleanor's breath caught. You sold my house? My car? Without even asking me? Her voice trembled, a mix of disbelief and hurt. Brianna's reply was sharp, almost impatient. It's done, Mother. We needed the money, and you weren't using them anyway. You should be grateful I handled it. Before Eleanor could form another word, the line went dead. The dial tone echoed in her ears, amplifying the silence that followed. She lowered the phone slowly, her hands shaking. Around her, the clinic remained unchanged, people flipping through magazines, a nurse calling out a name, but Eleanor's world had shifted. Her chest tightened with a mixture of betrayal and sorrow. The vacation house had been her and Thomas's sanctuary, a place where they had built decades of memories. The car was more than transportation, it was independence. And with a single cold phone call, both had been stripped away, sold off without her consent. Eleanor sat frozen in her chair, staring blankly ahead. For the first time, she began to wonder if the daughter she had sacrificed everything for had truly loved her, or only loved what she could take. The rest of Eleanor's day moved like a blur. After leaving the clinic, she wandered home on autopilot, her mind replaying the coldness in Brianna's voice, every word slicing deeper than the last. When she finally stepped inside her quiet house, the silence felt heavier than usual, pressing against her chest. She sat in her husband Thomas's old armchair, the one that still faintly smelled of cedar and pipe tobacco. For years, this had been her refuge, the place where she would close her eyes and almost hear his voice again. That evening, she whispered to the empty room, "Thomas, what happened to our daughter? Where did I go wrong?" As if in answer, her memory stirred. A vision of Thomas's weathered hands placing an envelope into hers came rushing back, his eyes serious, filled with a tenderness she had never forgotten. "Eleanor," he had said in a hushed tone, "when the time comes, when you feel you've lost everything, open this. It will guide you. But only when you are truly ready." Her breath caught. She hadn't thought of that envelope in years. Rising with sudden urgency, Eleanor walked to the back of her bedroom and knelt before an old oak chest. She opened it slowly, the hinges creaking like a whisper from the past. There, beneath folded linens and yellowed photo albums, lay the envelope, untouched, sealed with Thomas's neat handwriting, "For Eleanor, when the time is right." Her hands trembled as she broke the seal. Inside were several legal documents, thick and official, and a handwritten letter in Thomas's familiar script. She unfolded it carefully, her eyes filling with tears even before she began to read. "My dearest Eleanor," the letter began. "If you are reading this, then I am no longer by your side. Forgive me for what I kept hidden from you, but I did so to protect the love of our family. We possess more than what Brianna has ever known, investments, properties, and savings that together form a great fortune. I chose to keep this secret so our daughter would love us for who we are, not for what we have. I feared that money would twist her heart, and I pray I was wrong. But if you are opening this letter, it means my fears may have come true. Eleanor's tears spilled freely now, blotting the ink in places. She clutched the paper to her chest, overwhelmed by grief, love, and the bitter truth her husband had foreseen. She laid out the documents on the table, scanning each one. They confirmed Thomas's words: bank accounts with staggering balances, deeds to properties she never knew existed, carefully structured trusts. The weight of it all pressed upon her. It wasn't just money. It was power, security, and a second chance. For the first time since Brianna's call, Eleanor felt something stir inside her that wasn't sorrow. It was resolve. She realized that Thomas hadn't only left her with wealth, he had left her with a choice. How she used this legacy would determine not just her future, but Brianna's as well. Eleanor folded the letter with care, whispering softly, "Thank you, Thomas. I understand now. And I promise. I won't let this be in vain." As the evening shadows stretched across the room, Eleanor knew her life was about to change. The betrayal she had suffered would not define her. This legacy, unexpected, secret, and powerful, was the key to reclaiming everything she thought she had lost. For several nights, Eleanor lay awake, the letter from Thomas resting on her bedside table like a silent reminder of the power she now held. Her daughter's betrayal still burned in her chest, but beneath the pain, something new was awakening, a quiet, determined strength. She would not be a victim. Not anymore. Eleanor knew Brianna too well. If her daughter discovered the truth about the hidden fortune, she would circle like a vulture, demanding, manipulating, perhaps even destroying herself in the process. No, Eleanor decided, this secret would remain hers alone, for now. She needed to act carefully, with precision. The first step was finding someone she could trust. Her mind settled on George Whitman, an old family acquaintance and a lawyer with a reputation for integrity. Thomas had spoken highly of him years ago, saying, "If ever you need someone who won't betray your trust, call George." The next morning, Eleanor arranged an appointment. Walking into George's office, she felt both nervous and resolute. The shelves of thick law books and the faint scent of polished wood gave her a strange sense of safety, as though she were stepping into a place where rules could finally protect her instead of fail her. George greeted her warmly, though his eyes flickered with surprise at her request for confidentiality. "Eleanor, what's troubling you?" he asked, his tone gentle. Her voice was steady, though her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "It's Brianna. She sold my vacation home and my car without my consent. Both were in my name. I need to take them back, but I want to do it quietly, without a public fight." George leaned back in his chair, his brow furrowing. "If the transactions were unauthorized, there are legal avenues to invalidate them. But are you prepared for the consequences? Brianna may see this as an attack." Eleanor's gaze hardened. "Let her. She needs to learn that actions have consequences. But George, she cannot know about the rest. About what Thomas left behind." For a long moment, George studied her, then gave a slow nod. "Very well. We'll proceed cautiously. I'll handle the paperwork, and we'll make it appear as though the sales were simply reversed for technical reasons. To the outside world, it will be nothing more than a formality." Relief washed over Eleanor, but only slightly. She knew this was just the beginning. As George outlined the legal steps, petitions, property claims, the possibility of refunding the buyers, Eleanor listened intently, her mind sharper than it had been in years. This wasn't simply about reclaiming her house or her car. It was about reclaiming herself, piece by piece. Before she left his office, George placed a reassuring hand on hers. "Eleanor, I'll make sure this is done right. But you must be patient. This plan may take time." She gave him a small, determined smile. I've waited a lifetime to stand up for myself, George. I can wait a little longer. That evening, as Eleanor sat by the window with Thomas's letter once more in her hands, she whispered into the fading light, "This is for you, Thomas. And for me. I will not let her break me." The plan was in motion. Silent, deliberate, and powerful, like a storm building on the horizon. The days that followed were a blur of legal documents, phone calls, and careful strategy. Eleanor, once a woman who had never dared to raise her voice, now found herself walking a path of quiet determination. With George at her side, each step was calculated, every move precise. George worked swiftly, filing motions to the court and contacting the buyers who had unknowingly been drawn into Brianna's deceit. The sales contracts, though appearing legitimate on the surface, crumbled quickly under legal scrutiny. Brianna had no authority to sell property that wasn't hers. One morning, Eleanor sat across from George in his office as he spread out the documents before her. "It's exactly as we suspected," he explained, tapping his finger against the papers. "Brianna forged your consent. Legally, the sales are void. The buyers will be refunded, and your ownership rights restored." Eleanor exhaled a shaky breath, her hands trembling as she smoothed the letter Thomas had left her, now a constant companion in her handbag. "So, it's really happening? I'm getting it all back?" George gave her a reassuring nod. "Yes. And we'll keep your name out of the spotlight. To everyone else, this will look like a routine correction. No one will know the truth of what you've held in reserve." Over the next weeks, the process unfolded. The young couple who had purchased the vacation house reluctantly signed the reversal agreement. They had already begun imagining summers by the lake, but Eleanor ensured they were compensated fully and even offered them her sincere apologies. She couldn't bring herself to punish them for Brianna's selfishness. The car, too, was quietly returned. When Eleanor saw it again, her silver sedan parked neatly in her driveway, her chest tightened. It wasn't just a vehicle, it was freedom. Independence. A symbol of the life she still had the right to live. Yet, through it all, Eleanor remained silent. She told no neighbors, no friends, not even Brianna. To the world, it seemed as though nothing had changed. But inside her, everything had shifted. Late one evening, Eleanor stood at the window of her reclaimed vacation home. The moonlight shimmered across the lake, casting silver ripples that danced like memories. She pressed her hand against the glass, whispering to the night, "Thomas, I did it. We did it. She'll never know how close she came to destroying me." In that quiet moment, she felt a flicker of triumph. It wasn't the loud, vengeful kind, but a quiet, steady flame that reminded her she was not powerless. Brianna had taken much, but Eleanor had taken back more. And for the first time in years, Eleanor felt the stirring of something she had nearly forgotten: hope. By the time Brianna and Liam returned from their indulgent European getaway, Eleanor's preparations were complete. They came back with suitcases stuffed with new clothes and trinkets, their social media filled with pictures of Parisian cafes and Venetian gondolas. But behind the glossy smiles, debts lingered, debts Eleanor now intended to collect in silence. Sitting at her kitchen table, Eleanor carefully penned a letter in her steady, deliberate handwriting. Every word was chosen with care, firm, but not cruel, decisive, but not vengeful. She was done being the woman Brianna could trample over. When she finished, she slid the letter into an envelope alongside notarized legal documents George had prepared. The papers clearly stated that Eleanor had exercised her rightful ownership over the apartment Brianna and Liam had been living in, and that they were required by law to vacate the premises within 30 days. She stared at the sealed envelope for a long moment, her fingers tracing the edges. There was no joy in this act, only necessity. You brought this upon yourself, Brianna, she thought, her heart aching even as her resolve hardened. George, she said later that afternoon when she met him at his office, I want you to be the one to deliver it. Coming from me, it would only create a scene. Coming from you, it will be undeniable. George studied her face for a moment. Eleanor, are you sure? This will change everything between you and Brianna. Eleanor's eyes glistened, but her voice was steady. Everything has already changed. 2 days later, Brianna and Liam arrived at their apartment to find a crisp envelope slipped beneath their door. Brianna tore it open absent-mindedly, expecting bills or perhaps a notice from the building management. But as her eyes scanned the letter, her expression shifted, first confusion, then disbelief, and finally panic. What is this supposed to mean? She cried, shoving the papers into Liam's hands. She can't do this. She can't. Liam frowned as he skimmed the documents, his jaw tightening. It says right here she can. She owns the building, Brianna. Legally, we're just tenants. And she's given us 30 days. Brianna's face drained of color. She sank onto the couch, clutching the letter with trembling fingers. She wouldn't. She's my mother. She wouldn't throw me out. But deep down, Brianna knew this wasn't the soft, forgiving mother she had always counted on manipulating. This was someone different, someone who had found her strength. That night, Eleanor sat in her living room with a cup of tea, staring into the flames of the fireplace. She knew the letter had been delivered by now, knew Brianna's world was cracking open just as hers had weeks before. The thought did not fill her with satisfaction, only a calm certainty. For the first time in years, Eleanor had acted not out of fear, but out of power. The fateful letter had been sent. And there was no turning back. The letter sat crumpled on Brianna's coffee table, its words echoing in her mind like a verdict she couldn't escape. 30 days. 30 days to leave behind the apartment she had flaunted as a symbol of success, bought with money that had never been hers to take. Her hands shook as she dialed her mother's number. The phone rang twice before Eleanor answered, her voice calm, measured. Hello, Brianna. Mother. Brianna's voice cracked into a sob. How could you do this to me? To your own daughter? I have nowhere to go. Eleanor leaned back in her chair, her fingers resting lightly on Thomas's old letter. Her tone carried no anger, only an icy steadiness. Brianna, what you did was illegal. You sold what was not yours to sell. Actions have consequences. You must face them. Please, don't talk like that. Brianna cried. I was desperate. Liam said, her words faltered, and she broke into ragged sobs. Eleanor's silence pressed through the line until Brianna blurted out the truth. Liam tricked me, Mother. He promised we'd build a life together with the money, but he lied. He took it all, the money from the house, the car, and he left me. He's gone. Eleanor closed her eyes, her heart heavy but unmoved. She had suspected as much. Liam had always been charming on the surface but hollow beneath. So now you see, Eleanor said softly, the cost of trusting someone who only takes. You and I both know what it feels like to be deceived. Brianna's voice grew frantic, childlike. Please, just help me one more time. Give me money, or let me stay. I can't do this alone. For a moment, Eleanor felt the familiar tug, the instinct of a mother to protect, to rescue. But then she thought of Thomas, of the envelope, of all the nights she had cried alone while Brianna lived carelessly on her sacrifices. Her reply was calm, almost tender, but unyielding. No, Brianna. I will not give you money. You must learn to stand on your own. I have supported you all your life, and this is where it ends. If you want to stay in my house, it will not be as a dependent, it will be as a grown woman who accepts the consequences of her choices. The silence on the other end was broken only by Brianna's uneven breathing. Finally, she whispered, I never thought you'd turn your back on me. I'm not turning my back, Eleanor said firmly. I'm standing tall for the first time. With that, she ended the call, her hands steady as she set the phone down. Her heart ached, but there was also a quiet strength in her chest. Brianna had admitted the truth. The illusion had shattered. And Eleanor had refused to bend. In the quiet of her living room, Eleanor whispered to the empty air, Thomas, I think she's finally beginning to see. The knock at the door came late in the evening, hesitant and uneven. Eleanor had been reading by the fire, a wool blanket draped over her lap, when the sound broke the stillness of the house. She rose slowly, her heart already telling her who it must be. When she opened the door, the sight before her confirmed it, Brianna, disheveled, her eyes swollen from crying, standing on the porch with two battered suitcases. The clothes she wore were wrinkled and mismatched, a far cry from the elegant dresses she had once flaunted. Mother, Brianna whispered, her voice trembling. Please. I have nowhere else to go. For a long moment, Eleanor said nothing. She studied her daughter's face, searching for the girl she once knew beneath the layers of arrogance and entitlement. But all she saw now was a woman stripped bare, forced to face what she had become. Eleanor finally stepped aside. Bring your things in, she said quietly. Brianna dragged the suitcases over the threshold, her movements sluggish, as if each step carried the weight of her failures. The warmth of the house enveloped her, but the air between mother and daughter remained cold. Eleanor gestured toward the small guest room down the hall. You may stay there. The linens are clean. Dinner is in the fridge if you're hungry. Her tone was polite, but distant, like one addressing a stranger rather than her own child. Brianna set the suitcases down and turned to face her mother, her eyes glistening. I'm sorry, Mother. I never meant for things to end up this way. Liam, he ruined everything. But I know I was wrong too. Eleanor's gaze softened for a brief moment, but she quickly steadied herself. Yes, you were wrong. You betrayed my trust, Brianna. You took what was not yours, and you treated me as though I were a burden rather than your mother. Now you must live with the consequences. The words landed heavy in the room, leaving Brianna silent. She lowered her head, tears dripping onto the floor. For once, she did not argue, did not deflect blame. She simply absorbed the truth. That night, as Brianna lay on the narrow bed in the guest room, she stared at the ceiling, listening to the faint creaks of the old house. It was not comfort she felt, it was exile. This was no longer her home, not in the way it had been. She was a guest, tolerated but not embraced. In her own room, Eleanor sat by the window with Thomas's letter resting on her lap. She looked out into the dark night and whispered, She's back, Thomas. But this time, it will not be easy for her. She has to earn her way back. And so, beneath one roof, mother and daughter lived once more, bound by blood, divided by betrayal, and shadowed by unspoken lessons that had yet to unfold. Brianna thought she had reached the lowest point of her life. For months, she had been working part-time at a small cafe, her manicured hands now blistered from carrying trays and scrubbing dishes. Each morning, she swallowed her pride along with her coffee, forcing a smile for strangers while feeling the weight of her mother's silence at home. Eleanor, though not cruel, never offered comfort, only quiet observation, as if waiting for Brianna to finally see herself clearly. One rainy evening, Eleanor invited Brianna into her study. George, the trusted lawyer, was already seated, a thick folder resting on his lap. Brianna's heart sank. She expected another notice, another punishment, another reminder of how far she had fallen. Instead, Eleanor's calm voice broke the silence. "Brianna, it's time you knew the full truth." George opened the folder and spread out documents across the desk: bank records, legal contracts, and transfer forms. Brianna's eyes widened as she read. Eleanor had already repurchased the vacation house, reclaimed the car, and discreetly paid off Liam's mountain of debts long before Brianna even knew they existed. This can't be real," Brianna stammered, her voice trembling. You saved everything?" Eleanor's gaze was steady, her tone measured but firm. "I did. But I chose not to tell you. I needed you to live with the consequences of your choices, to feel what it meant to lose, to struggle, to be deceived. Only then could you begin to value what truly matters." Tears streamed down Brianna's face. For the first time, the truth struck her harder than any financial loss. All along, her mother had been in control, not as a manipulator, but as a guardian forcing her to confront her own selfishness. "You let me suffer," Brianna whispered, torn between anger and shame. Eleanor's voice softened, though her eyes glistened. "Yes. Because without that suffering, you would never have changed. Love isn't just giving, it's also allowing someone to fall, so they can learn how to stand." In that moment, Brianna felt the ground shift beneath her. The fortune she thought was lost had always been within reach, but the true inheritance was far greater, a chance to rebuild herself, stripped of illusions and greed. Brianna sat in silence, her hands trembling as she clutched the documents Eleanor had shown her. The weight of the truth pressed down heavier than any financial ruin. For weeks she had believed herself abandoned, forced to endure humiliation and hardship, only to discover that her mother had been protecting her all along. Tears of anger and shame filled her eyes. "You let me believe I had nothing," she whispered, her voice breaking. "You watched me struggle, knowing you could have stopped it. Why, Mother? Why would you let me suffer like that?" Eleanor leaned forward, her voice calm but firm, every word measured like a carefully placed stone. "Because, Brianna, it was the only way you would learn. I wasn't punishing you, I was giving you the chance to understand dignity. Money is fleeting, but self-respect is what carries you through life. Without it, you'll always be at the mercy of others." Brianna's tears spilled freely now, falling onto the papers in her hands. For the first time, she remembered the countless times she had dismissed Eleanor's advice, chasing quick comforts instead of values. All those moments came rushing back, the arrogance, the entitlement, the cruel words she had spoken when she believed her parents had little to give. Her voice cracked as she looked at her mother. I treated you terribly. I saw you as weak, as an obstacle. I thought Liam and the life he promised me were more important than you. And you still saved me." Eleanor's eyes softened, but she did not move closer. She wanted Brianna to find the strength within herself. "Apologies are a beginning, Brianna. But self-respect means living differently from this moment forward. It means earning trust back, not just from me, but from yourself." For the first time in years, Brianna felt a strange sense of clarity. The humiliation she had endured, the bitterness of betrayal, the long nights of doubt, all of it had carved away her illusions. What remained was painful, but pure. She rose from her chair and took a shaky breath. "Then let me try, Mother. I want to rebuild, not with Liam's lies, not with stolen comfort, but with my own hands. I want to be someone you can respect again." Eleanor gave a small nod, a glimmer of pride flickering behind her composed exterior. "That is all I ever wanted, my dear." And for the first time in a long while, Brianna didn't feel like a fallen daughter begging for mercy. She felt like a woman standing at the threshold of her own redemption. 3 years had passed since Eleanor laid that final letter on Brianna's desk, forcing her daughter to confront the truth. Now, the house that had once been filled with cold silence had become a place alive with laughter and meaning. Brianna stepped into the living room with her school bag in hand, her face glowing after her graduation ceremony. The bachelor's degree in social work she held was more than just a piece of paper, it was a symbol of an entire life transformed. "I did it, Mom," Brianna said, her voice trembling, her eyes glistening. "And this time, I did it on my own." Eleanor sat in her armchair by the window, a gentle smile spreading across her time-worn face. She nodded, her eyes shimmering with pride. "Yes, Brianna. You found the strength I always knew you had. This victory is yours, not mine." Since the day she returned to her mother's home, Brianna had vowed never to slip back into her old self. She worked part-time jobs, saved every penny to contribute to household expenses, and persevered to complete her long-delayed degree. Each month, she placed rent money on the table, though Eleanor often tried to refuse. "I don't need this money," Eleanor would say. "But I need to pay it," Brianna replied firmly, her eyes unwavering. "I need to prove that I deserve this home. I'm no longer a child living off you. I want to stand beside you as an equal woman." For the first time, Eleanor realized that the lesson from years ago had truly taken root in her daughter's heart. With the wealth Thomas had left behind, Eleanor established a foundation to support women in need, those who, like her and Brianna, had once been betrayed, belittled, or stripped of their self-worth. Together, she and Brianna renovated the lakeside vacation home, turning it into a shelter for women escaping domestic violence. On opening day, rows of simple wooden chairs filled the backyard, and a small white flag bearing the words, "Haven of Hope," fluttered in the breeze. Eleanor cut the ribbon while Brianna stood by her side, holding her mother's hand tightly. "I once thought I'd lost everything," Brianna whispered. "But I found it all again, and more, when I found you." Eleanor squeezed her hand gently, her heart overflowing with pure happiness. The years of pain and betrayal had not been wasted. They had become the foundation for building a new relationship, no longer based on blind sacrifice or greed, but on respect, true love, and a shared mission to help others. As the sunset cast golden light over the lake, mother and daughter sat together on the porch steps, watching young women lead their children into their new safe haven. Eleanor whispered softly, "A new future has begun, Brianna. Not just for us, but for everyone who walks through these doors." And Brianna smiled, knowing that for the first time in her life, she was no longer just Eleanor's daughter, she was her companion, walking side by side into a hopeful new chapter.